Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow-Driven CEO podcast. Today I am welcoming from a small town near Baltimore, which is Washington, DC, which is Tiffany Odutoye. Welcome to the show, Tiffany.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and excited to be with your audience. And especially on a Sunday, I showed up because I recognize, B, that the future of business is very human, and we just have to take moments to be able to lean into discussions like this. So thank you for having me.
No, you're so welcome, and we certainly do, and that's why I love having these fresh, real, honest, human conversations because I think the more we have these. Welcome to the show. I'm Chief Visionary Officer at Virtual Partner LLC, which is a leadership and organizational development firm that you launched back in 2008. So you're a seasoned entrepreneur. Your work spans women's leadership, cultural transformation and project-driven execution. You also teach PMP, prep, and host the She Rises podcast and heading into season two. And you're focused on shortening the leadership runway for women. And before Virtual Partner, Tiffany, you worked with major health and professional services brands. Tell us a bit about your journey and how, yeah, you've been doing this since 2008. Pre-show even, you were telling me about all the different things you've got on the go at the moment. It's like, yeah, tell us a bit.
I started I entered the entrepreneur world. I crossed a bridge. What we're finding is that most women, there's a mass exodus of women, great talent from the workplace. I think I recently saw a study where 300,000 women of color in the first quarter of 2025 are unemployed or underemployed.
Wow.
And really, years ago, it was no different for me. I crossed a bridge, and the bridge to entrepreneurship led me to leadership. So in 2002, I left the corporate world. I was an advisor to the chief executive officer of a global nonprofit organization and an advisor to the advisory board, not the advisory board, but the board of directors. And I left there and went to a girlfriend's shop and had an idea. And the idea I had was I wanted to start this business where I could have control of my life as well as provide value. So I took my pitch paper to her and asked her, please give me some advice. This was in 2002. She was hugely successful. She had a global business both in East Africa, the United States. She was into real estate. She was a mover and shaker. And she looked at me, raw, fresh talent. And she said, I'll hire your company. And she did. She gave me my first contract right on
Wow.
Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So I led marketing and business development for two of her companies. And after that, when my husband and I were relocating to Ohio, I realized that the small little business I started was unsustainable. Why? Because I was not prepared. I
Mm.
wasn't prepared to lead beyond what someone had given me the opportunity to do. So I got a job. And it wasn't long after I got a job, B, that I realized I love leading, and this job business isn't really recognizing my value. I needed to cross the bridge again, the bridge back to leadership, because the job wasn't recognizing my contributions. I picked, and it wasn't their fault, it was my fault. I
Yeah.
picked the wrong job, hoping they would see all this good stuff inside of me. And guess what? They saw all the good stuff inside of me. They used it and they paid me for the job that they hired me to do, not all the good stuff inside of me. And so I crossed the bridge again back to entrepreneurship. And I started Virtual Partner in 2007 and recognized what one executive told me: you are my sounding board, you are my compass, and you are a partner for me. And that's where Virtual Partner was born. It was born the moment that executive told me what it was that was of value to them, my potential customer. So I started Virtual Partner. I hired a global team of virtual assistants that would
Mm.
provide support, and I would provide the business advisory support and services from the side. I had a team in India. I had a visual team here in the United States. I had a virtual assistants across the United States. We wrote white papers, and we were trying to launch the digital world before the digital world was what it is today. I'm
Wow.
really excited about the work that we did back then. And I'm also more excited about the pivot we made in 2024. Virtual Partner doesn't do that work anymore. We learned, we evolved, and we're in a different place today. Thank you for asking.
Wow, incredible. Incredible because you started your business in the GFC, right? In 2008. And then come full circle, here we are you are in 2020 and you've gone and pivoted again in very different circumstances, but like obviously COVID. Fascinating. Tell us a little bit. So what did you do in 2020 that completely pivoted the business again?
So okay, so what was interesting, my husband and I believed that living your best life was doing what you were called to do. I am inherently a servant leader, and I believe in having the ability to serve in the capacity that you are called to serve in. So for many years, my husband and I pursued volunteer work, community service. We supported a refugee community. I did all of that behind the scenes and then realized you need to make some money because all that volunteer work is not going to contribute to your retirement plan. And I'll never forget my husband. I was having a conversation with a former colleague after I had taken a job in the DMV area, the Washington, D.C. area. Took a job. I became a vice president at age 47. And after I left that experience, I was sitting with a former customer from a large healthcare organization, global healthcare organization. We were having cocktails, and I had a bar napkin moment. And I asked her, like, what's going on with you? What are you doing? Did you get that promotion? And I realized we were both in a very similar place. Number one, I hadn't gotten my first corporate vice president role until age 47. And here she was, not knocking on the doors of the age that I was, but pretty close. And she hadn't gotten the promotion either. And we started having a conversation about how women ascend to leadership. My role to leadership had been crossing a bridge,
Mm,
bridging past experiences through the path of entrepreneurship to becoming a CEO. And hers was climbing the corporate ladder. It was different. So I had this light bulb moment of how women ascend: bridges, ladders, or elevators. Now, women usually who are in a position of privilege, or men in a position of privilege, someone sends the elevator down for them, right?
yeah.
To help them up. But the vast majority of women do not have that privilege, although they know the elevator exists and they may have support in their organizations, but they are not getting sponsorship. I realized this moment, and I'm like, I need to write a book about this, and I need to use my the experience I got through gaining my master's degree. I need to go and take that research experience from working in academic medicine, and I need to like apply some of the rigor of research to the funness of what I love doing
Mm,
and figure out how does she rise? And that gave birth to this thought about going back to work. So I go to my husband, fast forward, and I'm like, I think I want to go back to work. And he's like, yeah, I think you need to be an entrepreneur. I don't think the job thing is quite your thing. I think leading an organization, a mission, a movement is like what you're called to do. And I totally subscribe for that as long as it's a business, not a hobby.
mm.
I'll never forget that conversation. That was in 2024. 2 weeks later, I incorporated Virtual Partner in the state of Maryland. Previously, I had been in the state of Ohio, signed it up as a different type of entity, and began working with leaders in the area to figure out how would we stand up and bring value to my vision, right? How do we translate this vision into execution?
Yeah.
What does it become? And I'll never forget meeting with a branding firm, and nobody could really help me do it. It took me 2 years to get to this place where I am today, where I have absolute clarity about where we're going, where I have a method. I've built a strong team, and we've been called to the table at a global level to compete in business and leading transformation. And I'm really glad that I took the moment to be silent and still and do the hard work to think. AI cannot do that for you. It helps you, but you need to get clear about what's important to you and the kind of life you want to live. We did that in 2024. COVID really had nothing to do with my pivot. 2024 was a different kind of year, and I think I was turning 50.
Yeah.
and I had just turned 50, and I was like, okay, it's time to figure out what kind of legacy do you want to lead
Mm,
the next half of your life? What kind of impact do you want to make? What kind of work do you want to do? What kind of people do you want to work
mm.
with? How far expansive do you want it to be? And how can you change the experience for other women so they don't have to live the one you have, or take as long to get to where you are? So that's how I got to this place.
Amazing. And so She Rises, I mean, that's obviously your podcast, but is your movement all around She Rises as well? Like, is it a big movement that you're creating? And is that what you've now come to in terms of, excuse me, especially in the last, 12 months or so? Is this the bit that is the movement?
I will say that we have been able to integrate our values, our vision, and our mission together. And the work that She Rises does is not just a podcast, it is a movement.
Yeah.
It is also empirical and quantitative research that gives us the data that informs our leadership development curriculum and advisory services that helps organization rethink what human-centric leadership looks like, and it helps them rethink how they retain their greatest assets in the workplace. So
Mm.
we're using She Rises, or How She Rises, not just as a marketing tool, not just as a
No.
thing to talk about, but we're getting like real data from our global impact survey, our research, and we take that out to national conferences for women. We talk to hundreds of women to understand what their lived experience is. Not with all the books are telling us it should be,
No.
but what's really happening. Then we take that back to our customers, and it informs how we shape our programs
Yeah.
and what we encourage them to do to reset the landscape for women in the workplace and the men that are beside them.
Yeah, amazing. Tiffany, what are you seeing? Like in terms of what are you seeing from lived experience? What are some of the themes that are coming up from the research you're doing? Like it'd be great to share. Like I've got a lot of themes coming up even from the podcast, and like I said to you pre-show, this has been just as much as a research piece as an experiment for me, and it's going to continue. And similarly, it's not just a podcast, like it's way more than that. It's a movement. And I
Yeah.
concur in terms of the lived experience piece. Like the books can tell us everything, but at the end of the day, when we're hearing it verbatim from actual people that are in leadership, it really does enable us to inform what is next, what is the future of leadership look like.
Oh, I am so glad you asked that question. I have to preface this with our first global impact report is coming out, and our white paper is coming out in advance of International Women's
Oh
Month.
yeah,
We
beautiful.
also have our first global How She Rises summit, and that summit is focused on um, how the data shapes what leaders are doing. So we're saving some things for that, but I can
Oh,
tell you
absolutely.
this. I can tell you this. This is what we're finding. There are some global trends, current trends that are out there, and some data points. And it's interesting that we're finding what women are telling us, and I'll tell you from some of the interviews, they know exactly what they need. They have mentorship. What women don't have is sponsorship.
Mm.
Organizations in corporate America, they're great on clarity and transparency around mentorship. We are over mentored and under sponsored,
Yeah.
number one. And when what we're talking about is the elevator. So remember, they're bridges, the ones that you take one career and you get to the other, right? And you can stagger that and climb that way. So I went from being an employee to a manager or a vice president, and now I'm the CEO. I crossed a bridge, right? But the elevator, right? That is sent down twice as fast for a male than it is for a woman. Our research is telling us that it takes women 10 to 12 years to get on the elevator if it ever comes for them, and men 5.
Yeah.
And we're not even, when we peel back our data and we start to look at the demographics among women, some organizations are thinking they've got it covered because they've got women, right? They got equity because they have women. However, when we start to peel back the data, there's a different type of inequity for women that are Black, brown, and other.
Mm,
So as we start to look at that, and then of course, education and all these other factors also are there. So when we start to talk about what our data is finding for us, again, the elevator is not coming down as fast for women as it is for men, and this is directly related to the problem of sponsorship. Number two, I'll share this little nugget with you. I thought this was an interesting find. This came from one of our some of our research. They're telling us that women, this whole only thing, right? Where I'm the first woman, or I'm the only woman in the boardroom, or whatever the case is. We're finding sometimes women like it that way. They're not always so friendly, amicable, supportive, or do
agree.
they sponsor other women?
Agree.
That there's that's almost like the mean girl syndrome from
Yeah.
high school and
Yeah.
college happens in corporate. That's a very interesting find that our data is revealing. This is not supposition. This is what women are telling us. And we have yet to, now we have some early themes. We're going to be validating them around the world based on what some of our early research is showing. There's more to come in our report. Please
100%.
look
No, you don't
for
want to
it.
give it away. Like you want to share it. No, I
Yes,
get
there's
it.
a lot.
I totally, yeah, I totally get it. You know, it's interesting that what you're calling out because I remember quite a few years ago, I'm talking a good 10 or so years ago when I was in my previous career and I was at a festival, if you like, a creative festival. And one of the big conversations back then was around this mentorship versus sponsorship. And it was talking about women and, you know, the lack of sponsorship. And it's funny that it's not funny, but it's interesting and insightful that it's coming up again now because I'd kind of forgotten about sponsorship myself in terms of where we still talk a lot about mentorship, coaching, if you know, as well, but like what happened to the sponsorship and you know the male sponsoring the woman or the woman sponsoring the male like you know it's a very different experience to that of mentorship and it's interesting it's coming up again you know for me the big things that have been popping up you know is around this a need for purpose which you know we can all say yeah that's just a standard thing but more and more, you know, everyone is, the older you get, or depend, it doesn't matter really what age you are, like there's this need for the purpose. What lights you up from the inside? What lights you up inside? What connects your soul to what you're here to do in life? And quite often, you know, when we're just going to work doing our job and that's it, it's not enough anymore. Like for some people, but it is, but for quite a lot, it's not. And the other thing that's popping up for me is this need to be more like, and I'm going to ask you a question even specifically to you, but we're always on, right? There's just this 24/7, you know, kind of non-stop. So how do we be more present? How are we able to lead with presence in terms of that ability to ignore all that noise, subtract it out, and just be our present, authentic, you know, be present with our people. You know, you talk about servant leadership. I couldn't agree more. Um, and I still think there's a need for performance, you know, in terms of not the performative hustle, but the performance of that ability to be productive and efficient and be able to be that high performing and so for me they're really important like that people presence performance and purpose they kind of all so I talk a lot about that in terms of you know from my sharing with what leadership requires and not just from a male but a female perspective as well. I'm sure you see this and hear this also.
Yeah, I think you struck a chord with something that recently, not something that's recently happened, but a theme that I've landed on recently. And in a world that is focused on technological advancement, which we need,
Yeah.
and when we lean into that, we can find efficiency and automation. But in a sea of people, the world is very lonely at
Yes.
times, cold and isolated. And you wonder, how can you be so alone in a world and a sea of people? And there's this need for connectedness. There's a need for connection and presence. And I think what leaders are going to be grappling with, this is my prediction for the next few years, is how do we help women and our employees that have this need for purpose to have ownership of the time that technology has afforded us through efficiency and
Mm,
automation.
mm,
And we are finding, I was on a stage at Autodesk recently at a conference on AI and women, not just women, but immigrant leaders and female leaders and a whole bunch of investors. And as our technological advancement practitioners were talking about where AI was taking them, I kept bringing the audience back as their MC to the need for humanity at the center, connection at the center of everything, and how important it would be for leaders to rethink time that they give their employees back to pursue that which is important to them,
yeah,
and how important it is for leaders to encourage their workforce to identify where their passions in life, not in work, in life really lie, and encourage them to pursue that. It makes them better, stronger, more
agree.
committed to the workforce when they're able to find the balance and do the things that light them up. So I think leaders are going to have to grapple with the human side of the gift of time and what we do with it as a result of automation
Efficiency.
and technological advancement.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a really good call out because I've had quite a few conversations with a lot of different, people on the pod. Exactly that, and quite interesting, fascinating conversations. Some that are AI natives, and everyone is talking about we're going to be gifted more time. And so what do we do with that as humans? What do we do with that? Because like you say, it's the ability to give us more life, back versus just kind of grinding. And so yeah, it's a very interesting I guess insight and observation in terms of what leaders are going to grapple with, if you like, in terms of, well, I've got all this efficiency happening now, so what do I do with the rest of it? What do I do with my time? But I also come back to your humanity piece, right? Because I think this is where, the world isn't a great world at the moment. We've had some horrible, a terrorist attack happen here in Australia last week, and it's just been horrific, absolutely horrific.
I'm so sorry
And
to hear
and you
that.
talk about, humanity, and I was actually having a conversation with a friend via text last night. And for me, leadership, the new leadership, whether it's from on a political stage or whatever, humanity is a huge part of this. Humanity, compassion, like we're getting back more time. So what are we actually doing? What are we doing to, like you say, strengthen, upskill? Like these are all soft skills we're talking about here, but I hate even the thought of separating soft and hard skills. Like they shouldn't even be called soft skills. They're not soft skills. They're inherently who we are. And we as a society, you talk about connection. I get very, very worked up about this because I just think this is the future we need. And it's people like you, what I'm doing. We need to be trailblazing and proving out that this is the new world paradigm. This is going to result in unity, humanity. Anyway, my rant is over, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are two things that I wanted to speak to based on what I heard you just share. As we start to think about skills, we have moved from soft skills to what we're calling power skills.
Yeah.
And in the university where I'm a adjunct professor on professional studies, and I'm preparing the next generation of leaders of transformation to become certified practitioners of the discipline for leading transformation. And one of the quadrants of of the triangle, one is business acumen,
Yeah.
the other are the very technical skills of leading transformation. You know what the other side of the triangle is? What we call power skills. Used to be those soft skills, your
Mm,
ability to connect and lead people, your ability to understand the dynamics of teams, your ability to not just have emotional intelligence, but to have agility with your emotional intelligence. and your ability to recognize when people need to check out and give them permission to do it so they can come back and be better. One of the things we're doing at Virtual Partner, I love this. We're doing this and both here and with our team in South America. My chief of staff works 4 days a week. Virtual Partner does not operate on Friday. If I take a meeting on Fridays because I chose to, but Virtual Partner as a business, we do not open our offices on Friday. You can't book an appointment with us. We're not servicing customers on Friday. It's an anomaly if you can get us on a Friday, Monday through Thursday. And our team's encouraged to go and pursue your passion,
Mm.
whatever it is. And during the work week, whatever that is, piano lessons, we have one of our team members taking language lessons, another one taking a course somewhere else unrelated to work at Virtual Partner. She takes an hour here, hour there. We don't care as long as we know that she's creating efficiency through automation and right, she's getting it done.
Yeah,
And so
totally.
she's getting it done more than I would ever dream of. And I found the more I enable her to do what's important to her, the more work gets done
Yeah,
and the more
totally.
excellence she brings to the table. So, number one is around power skills. Number two is around creating not just the verbiage around balance in the workplace and creating space for people, but really having a policy. So, we sent a policy last year to our employees around work life balance, when and where to send emails, when to check out, that we don't care when you get your work done as long as you take your day off, and if you work more, take two next week. Like we have a culture, and so when we introduced that to our team in South America, they work 6 days a week in their culture.
Mm.
When we told them, oh, Virtual Partner, we don't work 6 days a week, we work four. We hustle 4 days, we get it done. But after that, you go do whatever it is that's important. Now, in that country, instead of a 5 day work week like here, going to four, we were told, oh, well, maybe we have to go from 6 days to five. But the point is that we have a policy, it's in writing, that we do not overwork our people. You have freedom to do whatever it is you need to do as long as you get your stuff done. And not giving them more things to do in the time that they've created efficiency. No, that time is for you to go and pursue what makes you better.
Yeah, I agree. And so I always call it bring your Saturday self to work. Like I always used to say to my team, bring your Saturday self to work. So like because it's that ability to, the more intrinsically motivated you are, the more you are, getting your creative juices flowing, your perspective, etc., the more you're going to be more motivated in what you're doing and wanting to bring more purpose to the work you're doing. Tiffany, a couple of final questions for you. How do you like, so you've just said, I love that your business is 4 days a week. As the entrepreneur, as the founder of the business, do you switch off? Like, do you have that ability? Like, do you do it too? Like in
I
terms of,
do.
yeah.
I do, and I'm transparent with it. So when I have a block of time in the morning that is called it's my shameless self-care block, and I call it out. It's my get started, my workout, meditation, my focus time. It's on my calendar. It's built into the way I work. I also have those times that I do volunteer work where I give back to the community. It's built in, it's on the schedule, it's a part of my way of being. I'm not hiding that from my staff and from our team. It's on the calendar, clear for everyone to see, and they know when things are non negotiable. And if I need to trade off one of those blocks for something else, there's a conversation about it. I put my spa time on there, my gym, my workout. I want them to see how important self care is. Look, date night is on there. Like, I'm not working on Friday. I got stuff I'm doing on Friday. And they see my Friday schedule with personal things on there. Now, I'm not saying that that's what everyone has to do. It's what I choose to do as the CEO of Virtual Partner. And if you have access to my calendar, you know exactly where to find me and you know exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking good care of Tiffany-O, but they also know I hustle and get it done when it comes to the business.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I call it active recovery, right? Self-care. It is that. It's so important. And I think that, having your calendar the way you've blocked it out, I'm very similar. And I recently learnt from somebody on the podcast around setting up your calendar, like your energy and colors. And I've got colors, but I hadn't thought about the
Yes.
energy of the colors, like, like what's draining energy, like doing it at this time or not. What would you say, second last question, what would you say is the biggest challenge of being an entrepreneur? You might not have any challenges. It might be just all the big opportunities, but like, I'm not
Mm-mm.
trying to be negative here, but what would you say is being the biggest in like today's world we're in?
Readiness, because when I say readiness, I mean being making the shift from an employee where you maybe have a functional set of expertise. You're really good at whatever it is, an accountant, or maybe you're an artist, a technologist, maybe you skin websites, whatever it is that you do as an employee. And now you say, I'm going to start a business. Well, as an employee, you have everything you need that to enable you to do that one function or however many of those functions you have as an employee. Most of the time, people are wearing several hats as employees, but the business is built around you. You're not a part of the budget. You're not a part of the strategic plan. You're not a part of setting the vision and the mission of the organization, hiring all the people, getting the work, the finances, the funding, the marketing. You're not part of that. You have the role that you
Mm,
play that enables the achievement of a part of the strategic plan.
mm,
I don't believe that entrepreneurs, when they start, are ready to do all of that and step out of the functional role that they had of being the accountant. That's the job you had. The entrepreneur being the CEO of your organization, it's a different hat. And I
mm.
don't believe, I know that I wasn't ready for that when I started in 2002, which is why I got a few contracts. I dominated the area in Washington, D.C. And as soon as I moved to another city, I didn't know how to do that all over again because I didn't know anyone.
Yeah,
So I think readiness is the biggest challenge that I personally experienced. And I didn't know what I didn't know about being ready, what that meant, and how I needed to show up, and the pivots and adjustments you have to make, and all the things you need to understand, and how ready you need to be to have someone else do the functional thing that the reason you left your job to start a
yeah,
business was the
totally.
functional thing.
So true.
But running a business, you can't do the functional thing all the time.
No,
You have to run the business, right? You have to be the rainmaker in your business and set the vision and lead people and the strategy. And that's
agree.
different than the functional piece. I think readiness would be the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a really good one. And then what would be your one hope or yeah, what would be your one hope for as we move into heading into 2026 and the future?
Hope for myself, for others. What
Yeah,
do
it's
you
a good
think?
yeah, sorry, I should have been more clear on that. I guess hope for society at large.
Mm, I hope we become more curious. If you change your questions, you change your outcomes, you change your life. These are the words of Dr. Marilee Adams. She's a professor at American University, a organizational psychologist, and she's done tremendous work on advancing trust in the workplace and creating chief question officers that really change outcomes. So I hope that we become more curious, both on a personal level and professional level, that we move from assumptions. I think that helps to reduce bias, that we ask more questions, that we pause when we think we're experiencing bias. I hope that our curiosity moves us to give more grace, and the answers to the questions we ask create a space where there's more connection. And I think there's so much that curiosity can do. And as we have a workforce that's embracing and adopting AI at rapid rates, that the curiosity that our teams bring to the table cause us to check the answers and validate the assumptions that technology is bringing back up. So I think curiosity is one of my greatest hopes. And on a personal level, in relationships, when we are more curious with one another, I think that creates an opportunity for a deeper, more profound connection.
Oh, so good. I love it. Readiness and curiosity. And I love that chief question officer. That's a brilliant one. I've heard a lot of different new terms, chief critical officer and, even new from a chief visionary officer and things like that. But I love that chief question officer. Let's bring that role in more and more into businesses. Tiffany-O, how do we find out more about you? How do we find out more about your business, your podcast?
You can find more about our podcast and our global impact study at howsherises.org. You can find out how to work with me, leading transformation, helping your team find balance, cohesion, and stability at virtualpartner.biz. If you want to know about me personally, please find me at virtualpartner, linkedin.com/n/virtual partner. You can find me there. And you can always Google Tiffany-O for Tiffany-O and find me on the web. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure and privilege to spend a few moments with you and your audience.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yeah, I'm loving everything you're doing in terms of the rising of the female, but no, and from making like the movement you're doing, virtual partners, and just ultimately, reshaping that whole life leadership business piece, which is exactly what myself and Bee Formless are all about as well. So, wishing you a happy end to the holiday, well, a happy end to the year, happy holidays, and a hugely successful 2026. And can't wait
Thank
to see what your movement does more of in the new year. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I want to encourage you and your audience. March 27th will be the public launch of our first Global Impact Survey on the Rise of Women. Towson University is sponsoring our global summit. We'll have online access to the executive briefing as well as an in-person ticket right there at Towson University on March 27th during International Women's Month. So please look for that on all of our web presences.
Will do. I look forward to it. Thanks, Tiffany. Take care.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.